Can I ask you a question? Be honest. How many of you showed up here today a different version than who you were when you got out of your bed this morning? I'm not talking about your outfit. I'm talking you walked through that door and somewhere in the back of your mind you thought, okay, who do I really need to be to show up in here today? The polished version of me? The professional version of me? The version of me who has not cried in a parking lot recently? I did this for decades. And the really embarrassing part is my whole message, what I've been telling women for over 15 years, is that you cannot compartmentalize your life and experience true wholeness. Yet recently, here I was, showed up for a podcast interview and immediately thought, okay, which Jessica is expected to show up here today? The fierce advocate, the confident consultant, or the brave yet gentle mama bear? It took me working on a keynote about my own life to finally realize I just need to be me. It has always just been me. And that thing that I've been doing in the background for free, that thing is not a side project. That is your calling. And it's about time you stop treating it like a hobby. I want to take you back to a little girl in Texas, 6 years old. Her dad worked so hard to provide for her family. He was her constant. But her life was surrounded by chaos, addiction, violence, a life that often did not feel safe. She was the oldest, so a lot of the responsibility fell on her. She became the fixer, the caregiver, the people pleaser who sought comfort in finding solutions and solving problems for her family. That little girl was me. Fast forward to about 15 years ago. I'm a homeschooling housewife in Montgomery, Texas, and I'm raising toddlers, nursing babies, and sharing about a crunchy, holistic lifestyle, which a lot of people back in 2009 thought was weird. Think Maha before it went mainstream. People began showing up for solutions in my inbox, at my door. Jessica, where do I find that? Jessica, who do I call for this? Jessica, can you just tell me where to start? And I did, for free, every time, because that was the easy part. I just could not help people. I also had a blog called Unprocessed Jess, where I shared about living life less processed with anyone who would listen. So I became the resource in my community for all things holistic health, GMOs, homeschooling, sharing products, that actually worked. I was the first in my circle to do a lot of things. I was also the person nobody thought to compensate for her time, energy, and effort, including me. The thought never even crossed my mind to charge. I mean, how could I charge for something that came so easily to me? Well, then 2020 came around. I'd heard about hospital protocols and mandates that infuriated me. Several friends had moms in the hospital, and they weren't allowed to see them. And so I sat there and thought, surely someone more qualified than a housewife in Montgomery, Texas, is going to speak up about this. So I waited and waited. And finally, out of frustration, I took to my online platforms and I started sharing what I saw and exactly how I felt about what was happening to so many people around our nation. And people started showing up again, seeking solutions. Teachers, parents, nurses, military families. One connection led to a state representative. I suddenly found myself testifying in the Texas Senate against censorship. And at the end of this testimony, I made a declaration. This mama bear is out of hibernation, and she's not going back to sleep. And that is how Mama Bear's Rising was born. Meanwhile, there was a personal battle raging at home, while publicly I was speaking up and protecting everyone else. One of my daughters was in the hospital for 5 weeks with a health complication. And while we were there, I became aware of something that happened in my own family, in my own home. It was devastating, and it tore our worlds apart. It was also something that sadly my husband simply chose not to address. I remember falling to the floor and sobbing, and just like that, I returned to that little girl surrounded by chaos who did not feel safe. I spent years advocating and speaking up to protect children, but I failed to protect my own daughter in my own home. So I had a choice. Stay in financial security, live a very comfortable lifestyle, and betray everything I stood for, or leave and trust God to provide. I walked away the next day, and I haven't looked back. And all the while, during my marriage, my husband would constantly remind me that he worked really hard so I didn't have to. Every time one of my little side projects would start to take off and gain traction, he would complain, "This is taking too much time for the family, and this is just a hobby." And so I would pull back every single time. Now I found myself navigating yet another complex system, the law, and what would lead to a 3-year-long separation. 3 years of asking God, is Mama Bear's Rising really worth it? Should I abandon this hobby and focus on something that's real? And then God started answering. He always does, just not always on our timeline. There was a moment of truth, a very simple yet significant moment. I was sitting alone at home, and I asked myself a question. I had been tolerating things that I never would have accepted for my daughters. Would I want this for them? Would I want them to do something they were called to do for free for years and not see the impact it made? Would I want them to stay small simply because someone told them their legacy was just a hobby? No, I wouldn't. And if I wouldn't want it for them, why in the world was I accepting it for myself? And that is where I rewrote everything. The moment I chose to fully embrace my calling and release what no longer served me, God started opening doors. He put the right people, projects, partnerships at the right time, and opportunities started showing up. I went to Israel with a government delegation, and at one of our dinners, our guest speaker said he'd heard of Mama Bear's Rising from a U.S. Congress member. He said organizations like mine and moms like me were shifting culture and influencing policy. My grassroots efforts had gone global. One housewife in Texas, no law degree, no political title, just a woman who could not speak up. So here I am, all the while, never where I thought I would be. And yet, I find myself asking what that moment was all these years later. And then another opportunity arose in Washington, D.C. at a government health conference. Here I am doing my introductions like I always do. And several women said, "Hey, Jessica's a connector. She's introduced me to a lot of people here." That's a word that keeps following me. Connector. I didn't think I could monetize it. I didn't even know it had value or was a skill. I meet you, and immediately I know, do you need to work with me? Or must I simply introduce you to a woman I met in Palm Beach last Tuesday? That's just how my brain works. And this is the gift I was giving away for free because I didn't believe it had value. So let me talk to you about a belief, a very common yet destructive belief. What I can contribute isn't enough to matter. Why vote? Both sides are the same. How can one mom showing up to a school board meeting make a difference? What good is my one voice in a system this broken? Apathy is destructive, and it is what is keeping all the systems broken. I want you to ask yourself, what can you contribute? What is holding you back? So here I am, where we are today. And I started to realize that now that I am a grandmother, yes, I'm a Gigi. He is beautiful. And I had the honor to witness my daughter hold her baby boy and make decisions for herself and her family during this process from a place that was rooted, grounded, and clear. All three of my daughters are standing strong in their values, unapologetic and confident in their convictions. And I realized I taught them that. Not by telling them, but by living it out right in front of them, by choosing, even when it was terrifying, to rise. They became the heroes of their own stories because they watched me become the heroes of mine. So I want you to ask yourself, what story are you living and wanting your kids to watch you live out? To the mom who's in the room, who is feeling overwhelmed and doesn't know where to go for solutions, there's a place for you where you can feel informed, not influenced, and find a community where you know you are not alone. To the woman who is sitting on the sidelines, who knows it's time to speak up, to find her voice, and stop waiting for someone else to do it first, let us walk alongside you. And to the leader, founder, and the person who knows that policy, community, and culture are all interconnected, and they just need someone to help them see across the board. Let's build together. Back to the apathy part. There was a woman in my community who heard me speak years ago. She was in oil and gas, and she was tired of climbing the corporate ladder and wanted to focus on her family, but she was unafraid, overwhelmed, and just didn't know where to start. She recently went to an event that I was speaking at, and she found me afterward, and she said, "Jessica, I met you. I followed the things you posted online. I connected with the resources that you shared, and we went for it. We pulled our boys out of school. We got an RV. We're traveling the country, and we're homeschooling. That woman heard from a mom who thought all those years ago she was simply sharing links and resources. It changed this family's life forever. I started Mama Bears Rising from my kitchen table. I've testified in houses of government. I've broken bread with elected officials and diplomats here and abroad. And I built this movement all during 3 years of one of the hardest seasons of my life. And I can promise you this, those doors didn't open until I stopped waiting and chose to rise. So stop waiting. Now is your time to rise. I'm Jessica Brassington. This mama bear's out of hibernation, and I'm not going back to sleep.